this tutorial, we will be discussing division of polynomials, particularly dividing a polynomial by a binomial. There are a number of ways to do this, tulad ng longhand division at synthetic division. In this video, we'll discuss longhand division, while another method called synthetic division will be discussed in a separate tutorial. However, these are things you need to recall. But don't worry, if ever nakalimutan nyo na, we'll try to explain them as we go along. Here's our first example. Let's say we're given this trinomial x squared minus 10x plus 16 divided by this binomial x minus 8. Now, to be able to divide this ng maayos, let's try to again recall, before anything else, longhand division during our elementary years. Kunwari, we're given 5,184. This number divided by 12. Let's recall the whole process so that we can apply dito mamaya. So, the first thing we do is look at the first number. 5 divided by 12. Of course, we cannot do that. So, what we want to do is involve 1. So, instead of just 5, 51. So, let's divide 51 this time. 51 divided by 12 is equal to 4. Take note, you have to write 4 on top of 1. Kasi katapat niya yung 1 dahil we involve 1 to get 51 divided by 12. And then after that, we multiply. 4 times 12 is equal to 48. Okay, next step. What we want to do now is subtract 51 minus 48. In this case, 51 minus 48 is 3. Then, next step. What we want to do now is bring down 8. So this now becomes 38. Then we do the whole process again. 38 divided by 12, of course we know, is 3. Then multiply na naman. 3 times 12 is 36. And just like the previous iteration of the process, ulitin mo. 38 minus 36 is equal to 2. Okay? And then again, you bring down 4. So, baba mo si 4. Then, again we divide. 24 divided by 12 is 2. And finally, multiply 2 times 12, which is 24. And then, last part, we subtract. Of course, we know the answer 24 minus 24 is equal to 0. Hence, 5,184 divided by 12 is equal to 432. Let's apply what we did here dito. So, how do we divide x squared minus 10x plus 16 divided by this binomial x minus 8? What we want to do is look at x squared first. So, let's divide x squared divided by x minus 8. Now, if you're not sure how to do that, maybe we can isolate that part. Again, let's divide this by this binomial. So, isolating it here, let this be our scratch area. So, kunwari, we're given x squared divided by x minus 8. Now, is there a way to cancel or divide this monomial by this binomial? Hindi pwede because, take note, we have a binomial here, and GEMDAS rule tells us that ang kailangan muna natin gawin is let's combine this before being able to divide. So, grouping first before you divide. GEMDAS rule. However, you cannot combine them because they are unlike. Therefore, hindi na pwedeng i-simplify. So, what should we do then? Ang gagawin natin is, let's try to divide x squared instead of by x minus 8, you divide x squared by x first, just x. So doing that, rules of exponents division, x squared divided by x, we know, is x. Now, take note, I wrote x on top of negative 10x because they are like terms. Just like what we did here, itinapat natin si 4 doon sa 1 kasi we divided 51 divided by 12. Dito, what we did is itinapat natin si x sa negative 10x because they are like terms. Next, what we want to do is multiply x by this. So doing that, we have x times x is equal to x squared. And then multiply x by negative 8 as well. So x times negative 8 is negative 8x. Okay, now recall, when we divided earlier, we divided x squared just by x to get x. But when you multiply this quotient x by both terms. So this becomes x times x squared, x times negative 8, negative 8x. Okay, next. What we want to do is subtract just like what we did here. So, let me write that, minus. However, dito merong mga carelessness sa mga students. Take note, when you are subtracting x squared minus 8x, we're subtracting the whole thing from this binomial. So, it's very important that we write parenthesis. We're subtracting the whole thing from this one. Now, that's very important because take note later, we need to distribute the negative sign. So, let's try to subtract. X squared minus x squared, of course, we know is they're the same, 0. But we don't need to write that. Okay? Next, these terms. Negative 10x minus negative 8. Distribute this. Now, para sa iba, medyo nahihirapan, possible source of carelessness. Now, what we can do if we're not that confident is let's try to rewrite things. Maybe this part. Again, let's make this part as your scratch for our scratch work. So, let me write that. So, we have negative 10. Ito yun. Minus negative 8. So, let me write that. Minus negative 8. Recall combining signed numbers. Kapag may minus, what you want to do is get the opposite of that. So, this becomes plus. And then, opposite of this, so this will become plus as well. So, in the end, what you want to do is instead negative 10 plus 8. So, this is negative 2. Okay. So, we write that. Negative 10 minus negative 8 is negative 2. Don't forget to write the common literal coefficient. Next, again, using this as our basis, the next step is to bring down 8. In this case, we bring down the next term, 16. Okay. And then let's do the same process over again. So negative 2x divided by x minus 8, we cannot do that. So divide negative 2x by just x. So negative 2x divided by x is negative 2. Again, as you can see, we're doing great because the terms, the constant terms are aligned. So after division, just like what we did previously, we multiply this quotient by this binomial, both terms. So negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Next, negative 2 times negative 8, take note of the sign, negative times negative is positive. 2 times 8 is 16. So again, just like what we did here, the next step is to subtract this whole thing from this one. So again, always place parentheses so that we know that we should distribute the negative sign later. So, let's do that. Negative 2x minus negative 2x. Of course, we know that they're equal. So, negative 2 plus 2 is 0. But we don't have to write that. Next, 16 minus 16 is 0. Therefore, a 0 here means this answer is exact. In the end, we have x minus 2 as the quotient of this trinomial divided by this binomial. Okay? Okay, now, there is a way to check if our answer is correct or not. Take note that the inverse of the opposite rather of division is multiplication. So what we can do is multiply this binomial by this binomial. If their product is equal to this trinomial, then our answer is correct. It's the same reason that we can check this answer by multiplying 432 by 12, which would give us a product of 5,184. Okay, let's do that. Let me copy this binomial. So we have x minus 2 times x minus 8. Multiplying these two. So recall, how do you multiply binomials again? It's a technique called FOIL. FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last. Okay, let's multiply then our first terms first. So these are the first terms. X times x is x squared. And then plus, get the product of the outer terms, which are x and negative 8. So x times negative 8, the outer terms, their product is negative 8x. And then always plus. Next, I stands for inner, which are these two terms. So inner terms, their product, negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And finally, always plus. Multiply these last terms. L stands for last. Negative 2 times negative 8 is positive 16. And just like most FOIL or binomial by binomial multiplication, our outer and inner terms usually can be combined. They are like terms. So, copying our first term here, x squared, then negative 8x plus negative 2x is negative 10x. And then, finally, our constant 16. So, in the end, by checking, we have this product which is equal to our original trinomial. Therefore, our x minus 2 is really the answer or the quotient to this trinomial by this binomial. You are now given a chance to answer some exercises. You can pause this video to do this on your own. Don't worry, solutions will also be shown and discussed so you can learn more. You can try this now. Kaya yan. Go! So you can pause this video now. Done? Sige, try nating sagutan to. 4x squared divided by x is 4x. Take note, aligned ang 4x and negative 7x because they are like terms. Then we multiply. 4x times x is 4x squared. Then 4x times negative 2 is negative 8x. Again, reminder, when you divide this term by this term only. And then when you multiply, you distribute this quotient by this binomial. Next, we subtract this whole thing from this binomial above. So 4x squared minus 4x squared is 0. Now take note, when subtracting, definitely this 2 should be equal because we got this from this quotient. And if our quotient is correct, then they should be equal when you multiply them later. So 4x squared minus 4x squared is 0. No need to write. And then negative 7 minus negative 8. Negative 7, this one, minus negative 8. So minus negative 8. So convert this to opposite and then opposite as well. So negative 7 plus 8 is simply equal to 1. So we can write 1 here and then copy our common literal coefficient x. Next, we bring down negative 2. So we divide again. 1x divided by x is simply 1. Again, you should be confident that we're doing fine because these two terms, these constants are aligned. Next, we distribute 1 to these two. 1 times x is simply x or 1x, they're the same. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And then, again, we subtract this whole thing from this whole thing, make sure you always put parentheses so that you know that we should distribute the negative sign. 1x minus x, 0. No need to write that. Negative 2 minus negative 2. You don't need scratch work for that kasi they're the same. When you subtract a number from the very same number, this should be equal to 0. Therefore, our answer is exact, 4x plus 1. How do we check again? We multiply this quotient by this binomial. So let's try and do that. So let's say we're given 4x plus 1 times x minus 2. So recall that we can use the FOIL method to multiply binomials. First, outer, inner, last. Let's try and do that. First terms, 4x times x is 4x squared. Always plus. Outer for O. 4x times negative 2 is negative 8x. Always plus. Inner, 1 times x is 1x, or simply x. And then, last, 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. And again, just like almost all binomial times binomial, we can combine the outer and inner terms. So copying the other terms, because they don't have like terms, for x squared. What is negative 8x plus x? It's negative 7x. And then finally, copy minus 2. As you can see, when we check, we got this trinomial. Therefore, we're confident that our quotient is correct. That is our answer. So, try this next exercise. Again, you can pause the video while you're doing this. Go! Okay, so let's divide this. We have 2x squared divided by 2x is equal to x. Then multiply x times 2x is 2x squared. Then x minus times negative 6 is negative 6x. Next, we subtract this whole thing from this one. So 2x squared minus 2x is 0. Negative 4 minus negative 6, let this be our scratch area. Negative 4 minus negative 6, we convert. This then is equal to 2. So we have 2, and then don't forget to copy our literal coefficient. Then we bring down negative 6. 2x divided by 2x is 1. 1 times 2x is 2x. 1 times negative 6 is negative 6. And then again, we subtract this whole thing from that one. This is 0. So this must be our answer, because this is exact. Now again, we can check by FOIL by multiplying this quotient by this divisor. So our answer, x plus 1, was the correct. Here's another example. Now let's watch out the difference between this example and the previous exercises that we have been doing so far. Let's say we're asked to divide this trinomial by this binomial. So let's do our process. 3x cubed divided by x is equal to 3x squared. Again, as you can see, these two are aligned because they are like terms. Next, we multiply 3x squared by x. We have 3x cubed. This must be correct because these are the same. Then 3x squared times negative 2 is negative 6x squared. And then we subtract that whole thing from that binomial on top. So 3x cubed minus 3x cubed is 0. No need to write that. And then 1 minus negative 6 is the same thing as 1 plus 6, which is 7. And then copy the common literal coefficient 7x squared. And then just like what we have been doing, we bring down the next term. So we write here negative 1. Then we divide. 7x squared divided by x is positive 7x. In this particular example, we now have a problem. Look at the last term here in the quotient and the last term from our dividend. Take note, they are unlike. So, what makes this different from the previous examples or previous exercises that we have done so far? Notice, there is sort of a missing term here. Although these degrees are in decreasing order, x cubed, x squared, something is missing. We're missing x. So what do we do in this case? So you divide this by placing 0x between x squared and minus 1. Now, why do you need this one? What we can do is look at numbers as our basis. For example, we are asked to write 4021. Do you write 4021 as 4, 2, 1? Of course not. That is 421. Instead, we write 4021 as 4, 0, 2, 1. Meaning, you need to place 0 in the hundreds place so that you know that there are 0 hundreds, so that you have 4021. So, what we did is copy this concept and place 0 as the numerical coefficient of x between x squared and negative 1. So we can now proceed because our terms are complete. We have 3x cubed divided by x, which is 3x squared. Again, taking note that these are like terms. Then we distribute 3x squared by these two. So we have 3x cubed, and then 3x squared times negative 2 is negative 6x squared. And then we subtract this whole thing. So 3x cubed minus 3x cubed is 0. No need to write that. And then x squared minus negative 6x squared is 1 minus negative 6 is 1 plus 6. Therefore, 7. And then copy the common literal coefficient x squared. We continue by bringing this down. So we now have 0x in this case. So we continue dividing. 7x squared divided by x is positive 7x. As you can see, we now have like terms on top of each other. Our answer so far is correct. So 7x times x is equal to 7x squared. Then distribute 7x times negative 2 is negative 14x. And then we subtract this again. Don't forget, you should always place parentheses. So 7x squared minus 7x squared is 0. You don't need to write that. So 0 minus negative 14, this will become plus 14. Therefore, this should be 14x. Then, we bring down negative 1. We divide again. 14x divided by x is positive 14. Then multiply, distribute 14. 14 times x is positive 14x. Again, no problem, they are the same. 14 times negative 2, though, is negative 28. So again, we distribute the negative sign when we subtract. 14x minus 14x is 0. No need to write that. However, in this particular constant, minus 1 or negative 1 minus negative 28, let me write that here as our, because we can use this as our scratch area. So we have negative 1 minus negative 28. Opposite, opposite. We now have negative 1 plus 28 or 27. Now, what does an extra 27 here mean? Now, supposedly, we're done with division because we already have a constant here. Now, what we can do is again use numbers as our basis on how to interpret that extra number there. So let's say we're given 5 divided by 4. So 5 divided by 4 is 1. Then multiply 1 times 4 is 4. Then we subtract. minus 4. So we have 1 here. Now, similar to what we just did here, we have an extra 1 there. Now, from our elementary days, we simply wrote this as 1 remainder 1. However, that doesn't make much sense. Instead, we can write this as 1, and then we have 1 here that we cannot divide with 4 anymore. So it's the same thing as saying 1 and 1/4. Meaning there's an extra division that we didn't need to take. So the answer is 1, and then extra division that we did not take, so 1 divided by 4. Hence, the final answer of 1 and 1/4. Now, using this as our basis, what does this 27 mean? This means we also have an extra division that we don't need to take. We have 27 all over our divisor x minus 2 that we cannot solve anymore. Therefore, our final answer is 3x squared plus 7x plus 14 plus 27 all over x minus 2. So this is the final answer. And we got this because we have a remainder equal to 27. Here are some more extra exercises you can do to master the concepts we have just learned. The answers are given at the end of this video so you can check. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy solving!